This video is about OBIEE's architecture from a technical point of view. We're going to build up this picture in step by step, and first thing that's obviously available is the sources, the source systems that provide the data for any kind of content in OBIEE. The OBIEE architecture needs a supporting database schema. This can be stored in any relational database, and it contains some supporting information for some of the tools. When you install OBIEE, you need some kind of server machine, which can be on any OS, Linux, Unix, or Windows. And when you install it, you get the main Java component of the architecture, which is the WebLogic server. And this can be an admin server only, or an admin server and a managed server in combination, or an admin server and a cluster of managed servers. There are also some OS level components which do not run on the Java level of the WebLogic server. They're managed by the Oracle Process Manager, OPMN, and well, the WebLogic server and OPMN are the only two processes that should be kicked off when you want to run OBIEE. OPMN takes care of the starting and keeping running of the remaining OS level services, and they are the Java host, which allows OBIEE to run some Java code, a cluster controller, which controls in a clustered environment the clustering of the OS level components, a scheduler for scheduling and delivering content, the BI server. This is the main query generation tool, and it connects to the sources in anywhere, and this is the component that runs your metadata layer for all the OBIEE content. And this metadata is stored in a file which is run by the BI server, and this file is called the repository. Finally, there's the presentation server, which is a service that generates all the web content and keeps track of storing all the objects you create, like for instance dashboards or ad hoc analysis or published reports. All these objects are stored in a folder structure called the catalog. Well, within the WebLogic server, there's a few deployments that can be approached from the web. The most important ones are mentioned here. So the console, running at /console, which is the management environment for the WebLogic server. /em, enterprise manager, which is the management environment for your BI infrastructure. And then there's /analytics, which is the main access point for all the BI front-end, web front-end tools. This is the URL that is used by most users. And then there's a lot more stuff, like for instance the RTD, real-time decisions, deployments, web services, the map viewer stuff. You get a lot of things, but these three are the most important. Well, of course, on the OS server level, there's a lot of configuration files. Some of them are maintained through the console. Some of them are maintained through Enterprise Manager. And there's also a lot of logging files on the system. The next thing in the architecture is the end user's PC. Well, this is very simple. You don't need to install anything on his PC. All of the OBIEE stuff is can be approached through the web. The admin PC is the last piece in the architecture. An administrator, of course, also needs a browser to connect to the console or to Enterprise Manager. And there's also some Windows-only administration tools that allow the administrator to connect to the BI server to do maintenance on the repository, or connect to the presentation catalog to do maintenance over there. So that's it. This is the OBIEE architecture from a technical point of view. Let's go over some of the usage scenarios in order to see how all these components fit together. So, the most obvious scenario is that when all this stuff is running, a user wants to use OBIEE. So, the user fires up his browser and connects to the WebLogic server at the right server node and the right port, and adds /analytics to the URL. The /analytics deployment catches this request and moves it or passes it on to the presentation server. The presentation server presents the end user with the logon screen, allows the user to log on, allows the user to select, for instance, a dashboard or an ad hoc analysis. And if the user develops an ad hoc analysis, during development he might want to run a query to retrieve some data. In that case, the presentation server passes on the query to the BI server. The BI server generates an SQL statement based on the metadata in the repository, retrieves this from the correct source, and returns the results to the presentation server, which presents the results back to the end user. If the end user decides to save his request, it will end up somewhere in the catalog. If the user wants to put this request on a dashboard, it will end up in a dashboard definition also saved in the catalog. So that's the main scenario for using OBIEE. Of course, through the presentation server, the user can also interact with the scheduler in order to schedule some content, and this will keep on running or doing its job after the user has signed out. Another common scenario is that an administrator wants to fire up or control which components are running at the server at any given time. He may want to stop some components. Well, in order to do anything, the first thing at the server level, the WebLogic server, or at least the WebLogic admin server, needs to be running. And if this is running, the administrator is able to connect with his browser to the WebLogic console. From there, the administrator can start up managed services and make sure the servers that are running the actual software or the entire cluster is up. Next, if the administrator wants to take control of all the other stuff, he can connect his browser to the /em URL, and we'll get into some dashboards in which he is able to, for instance, stop and start the OPMN components. This can be done all at once or one at a time. The status of all the components is shown here. So the console and the Enterprise Manager URLs are the most important URLs for an administrator to maintain the environment. A third common scenario, which is more common for a developer, a content developer, and a repository metadata developer, is that the developer fires up his Windows-based administration tool and connects directly to the BI server in order to do maintenance on the repository. The metadata administrator is able to import metadata from a source into a repository and use it in the business model that is modeled over here. In this way, the repository can be extended and more components from the business model can be made available through the presentation server, through the analytics component, to the end users. Another way in which a metadata developer can use the admin tool is to create a repository file locally or to modify a repository file locally. If he wants to import metadata from the sources, he would have to do it directly from his Windows PC. Once the repository file is saved, the user or the developer can connect his browser to the Enterprise Manager and through the browser interface upload the repository file to the BI server, which will replace the repository file that is currently running in the BI server.